Welcome back to TV Toastmasters. I'm Beth Genly, your host for this segment, and I am very pleased to have a repeat guest with me this evening. A few months back, I spoke with Anthony Jackson about the basics of conflict resolution, and it was a fascinating conversation. Afterward, we were chatting and realized we both had an interest in race relations and how to have productive conversations there. So, Anthony Jackson, welcome back.
Thanks, Beth. Nice to be back. I appreciate you having me come back.
I'm thrilled that you're here, and I have learned that you have a lot of experience in facilitating these conversations. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. First, I want to say that I appreciate your willingness to be willing to have this conversation. The experience that I have with Race Talks facilitations is I'm a facilitator with Race Talks. Race Talks is an event that's actually put on each month, the second Tuesday of each month at the McMenamins Kennedy School. And I've been facilitating Race Talks conversations in small groups for about 7 or 8 years now.
Oh my goodness, every month?
Every month,
wow.
Every month, yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, in addition to that, in my profession, I have done work in the EEO and civil rights arena for, about 12 to 15 years. So I have experience in my occupation as well as what I do, in my spare time.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm really thrilled that you're willing to bring all that experience to our show. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to get into this because I think a lot of us feel frightened to open our mouths and say, this feels like a racial issue to me, or I'm not sure how you feel about this because you're black, or whatever it is that would come up. And so I just wanted to open up the possibility mm-hmm. of having a dialogue a mm-hmm. bit. And I know you have a lot of stories about dialogues you facilitated. So
I do, and it's interesting that you said a lot of us, right, have trepidation, or we're not sure, or whatever about bringing up something that has to do with the subject of race.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, what did you mean by a lot of us?
Oh, that
Were you
is
talking
a
about
great
any
question.
specific person, or I'm just curious.
I was talking about people I know, and they're probably predominantly white. Mm-hmm. I did have one experience recently where I ended up being roommates with a black woman that I didn't know for a conference that we both went to, and both of us were very uneasy at first, mm-hmm. and we ended up bonding because of the nature of the program and because we were sharing a room for several days every few months. But both of us felt, and we confessed this to each other about 3 months in, we both were very reserved and very on our guard. And both of us, I think, are very liberal and very, we work with people of other races all the time, and yet in this setting, mm-hmm. it kind of pushed us up. So I would say in general, when I say a lot of us, I mean
right.
me, white mm-hmm. people, mm-hmm. but I've experienced it in other settings too.
That's good. Yeah. I like the clarification for a couple of reasons. First of all, as an interviewee in this situation, I don't want you to feel like I represent every black man, right? Or that I represent anybody who identifies as a person of color, because I don't. Right. I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for my experiences and those of others that I've interacted with in the various work that I do. So what I'm going to share is things that either I personally have experienced, or things that I've heard, or that are have been general themes in the work that I do, right? The volunteer work as well as the paid work. So just want to get that out there to begin with.
Well, you know what? I want to pause on it for just a second, because when you asked me, I realized that I had a really vague standard in my head. And when you said, who's us? I thought, I don't actually really know, but I was sort of retreating into a comfort area there, and that's mm-hmm. that's a setup already. So thank you for that.
Sure, no problem. Yeah. All right. So having said the things that I said, I also want to say that I have had, racial experiences that have been negative as well as that have been positive. And I also want to say that when you think of people, I think one of the biggest dangers that we have is our biases, the unconscious and the conscious biases. And the fact that a lot of times when it comes to race, there's a fair number of folks in every group, every racial group, every identity, that they have a single story about somebody else in another group, right? There are people who are white people who have told me, I thought all black people blank, 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 whatever it was. And I have had black people and people of color who've told me, my experience and my thinking and my background has taught me that with white people, you have to blank, 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 or that they're always going to treat you this certain way. And the fact of the matter is, those are all people's experiences and opinions, but you can't lump everybody into those categories.
I might add that if it's a particularly negative experience, it's going to stand out for you many times more than milder positive experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, that's true. That's very true. Yeah. So sometimes it's helpful for somebody to share some experiences. So let me share some experiences that I've had and that I know other people of color have had as well. And let's start in an area that actually has been in the news fairly recently. And that is police shooting and killing unarmed black people. One of the more recent ones that's been in the news was the white lady cop who went into another apartment that wasn't hers and shot an unarmed black man who was in his apartment because she mistakenly thought that he was in her apartment. Now, anybody who's seen this story and you go back and you look at the facts and the evidence and everything else, it was pretty clear what happened there. But the problem isn't just that such a horrible thing happened. The problem really is why it happened, right? Why did she not identify herself? Why did she not give him an opportunity to explain that she was in his apartment and he wasn't in hers? What was the rush to pull out her weapon and discharge it, and killing him? That's something that people of color worry about all the time. That's something that anytime I get pulled over by a policeman or anytime that somebody comes up to me, I feel like if they somehow in their mind are threatened by me, even if it's not whatever I do or say isn't intentional, I might not make it home.
So I'd love for you to tell now the chalupa story, because that story in this context, it really gives me a sense of what you might have been going through. So carry on. Tell us the chalupa story. Okay, good.
So I guess I did the setup and now I'll tell the story. So I play soccer, and even though I have an Oregon Ducks, go Ducks, shirt on, I play old man soccer, right? I'm right on the doorstep of 60. So I play in a league of over 50s, and sometimes we play with younger kids too. And one night, I was going home after soccer practice, and where we used to live, there was a Taco Bell that was about half a block from our house. I had one of those coupons for a free chalupa that the Trailblazers gave out because I went to a game, they scored over 100 points, I got my free chalupa coupon, and I was really hungry after practice. So on my way home, I decided I was going to stop at the Taco Bell, get my free chalupa, and then, meander on home. So I went through the drive-thru, got the chalupa, and I was heading home, and then the thought hit me that my wife was making dinner. And so one thing that I've learned after 37 years of marriage is that it's a little disrespectful to walk into the house with a chalupa from Taco Bell when your wife's making dinner for you. So I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'll just pull over to the side of the road here, out of sight of her. I'll just scarf my chalupa down, and then I'll walk into the house and say, hey, sweetie, I'm home, and then sit down and have a nice meal. The chalupa wasn't going to fill me up, right? I was hungry. So I pulled over to the side of the road, turned off the car, had the radio on, and a police car pulled up behind me, lights and sirens were on, and like I was no, it wasn't the first time, that I'd been pulled over by the policeman, but it was the first time when I was parked that a policeman rolled up on me and, hit the lights and the sirens. So I was wondering, I knew what it was like to be driving while black, getting a DWB. I knew that, had plenty of experiences with that. This was going to be my first experience of parking while black, right? I didn't know that was going to be the experience, but that's the way it turned out. So as I, was waiting for him to come up to that car, I went through my mind of all the possibilities that might be the reason that he was coming up and wanting to, talk to me. I couldn't think of anything at all. So when he got there, I asked him, well, I wasn't driving. I'm not sure why you pulled up on me like this and, what the problem is. And he didn't answer what I was asking, but he said, I need to see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. So I had all of that. I gave that to him and I said, okay, here you go, officer. I said, can you tell me, why you pulled me over? And he said, he didn't answer. He just turned his back, went back to his car. Okay, I figured he would check whatever he needs to check, come back, and I would be free to go. He was gone back at his car for 45 minutes while I sat there and stewed about what was going on. Now, I thought about getting out of the car, but then I also thought that if I get out of the car, he might feel threatened and, my life might end that night. So I didn't. I just thought I'm staying in the car, keeping my hands on the wheel so that he could see.
For 45 minutes.
Yeah. I'm not making any certain movements. I'm not pulling anything out, from underneath, anything like that. I'm just here. And needless to say, during that 45 minutes, my anxiety grew, to really, really high levels. So he finally came back up to the car and he handed me all my stuff back. And he said, the reason that I pulled up on you is because you match the profile of a burglar in the neighborhood. Somebody has been, robbing houses or whatever, and, you match the profile. And I thought to myself, well, I matched well, he could see that my house we could literally see the house from where I was pulled over. I said, well, that's my house right there. You see it on my driver's license. Why would you just not think that I was on my way home? I explained to you, because I had explained the whole story to him. And he said, well, he says, since you matched the profile, I felt like I had to check you out. So now some people might say he was totally justified in everything that he did, but I felt really disrespected in that sense because he probably had heard that it was a black person, a black man, who had been burglarizing these houses. Well, that doesn't mean every black man on the street is somebody that he should be pulling over and checking out. I mean, he went through my car, I guess to verify there wasn't any stolen goods or whatever there. And I mean, I almost felt like violated or something. I thought you were supposed to have a reason to actually pull somebody over, like they have to have done something. And I was parked. And so that was just like one example of, maybe a dozen or so that I have of times when, my interactions with the police haven't been super positive and where I felt like my race was a primary reason for that. So, having said that, I also want to say that I don't believe that most police are like that. I don't believe most police are problematic, are not caring, are, trying to exert their power or any of those things that that a lot of folks believe. I believe it's a small percentage of them. So, having said that, I also want to say that I don't believe that most police are like that. I don't believe most police are problematic, are not caring, are, trying to exert their power or any of those things that, that a lot of folks believe. I believe it's a small percentage of them.
Why should you join Toastmasters? Well, I joined because I needed one more person to charter a club. And I thought, I don't need Toastmasters. I'm comfortable speaking in front of people. Boy, was I wrong. I not only learned how to speak more confidently and capably in front of larger groups of people, my wife loves the fact that I learned how to listen better. So you not only learn speaking skills, you learn listening skills and leadership skills. You build great friendships, you hear great stories, and you get over, mostly, your fear of public speaking. Why join Toastmasters? It'll make you a better person. It certainly did that for me.
In order to be able to get exonerated. And there's something wrong with that picture.
There is indeed. And I want to react a little bit to this from my perspective. One is, when you told me this story, the piece that shocked me the most the first time I heard it was that you said you've had a dozen experiences of getting pulled over for no reason, apparently because you're black. I have never had that experience. And it is easy for me to believe it doesn't happen unless I think about it, or unless I talk to someone like you who has that experience over and over. And I've seen a lot of discussion about white privilege lately, and I think this is an illustration of white privilege. I didn't ask to not be pulled over. I prefer to not be pulled over, thank you, but it isn't something that I think about. It isn't something that I have to reach for. It isn't something that somebody says, oh, you get a pass because you're white. It just doesn't happen, right? And so I imagine, a net less level of stress. Even if we didn't couch this in every once in a while, somebody gets shot for no darn reason from some rogue police officer or somebody who's had a really, really, really bad day or month or year and just loses it, right? It's not okay to lose it that way, ever. So where am I going with this? It upsets me. I don't like it. I guess that's and for me, I can just be outraged and go on about my business. It might happen to you again tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It could happen to me on the way home tonight. I mean, literally 3 years ago, I was standing at a bus stop waiting for the bus to take me home. And a police car came down 122nd, went into the, there was a gas station and grocery store on 122nd and Burnside. The police car pulled in there, went inside, talked to somebody, got back in his car, and then pulled back across over to the bus stop where I was standing. Got out with his hand on his gun and started barking orders at me and asking me questions like, who am I? What was I doing there? How long had I been there? You know, all these kinds of questions which totally didn't make sense to me. And then another police car came down the other way and they pulled up too, so that now there was 2 police cars there with their lights on me. I'm standing there waiting for the bus, and what turned out to happen is that apparently a black man, or actually a black teenager or something, had gone into the store and had threatened to kill everybody. And the store owner said that, you know, the person was black and they saw me across the street, and so they all came over to check it out. So while I was there talking to the policemen, a crowd of people gathered around, you know, to see what was going on. And I explained to him I was just waiting for my bus to go home. And I said, I'm sure that the man just mistook me for whoever the person was. And I told the policeman, I said, you can just bring him out, have him see me. I haven't been in that store in months. He'll say that I wasn't the person, and then you could actually go look for the real person. And the policeman said, well, he says, how about if you just come with me? And I said, well, if I come with you, then if I miss my bus, you need to give me a ride home. Because I thought it was only fair, right? If I have to do this and I'm exonerated, you're either taking me to jail or you're taking me home. One or the other. I'm happy with either thing. And so that's what we ended up doing. The gentleman said, no, that's not the guy. The guy had parachute pants on, and you know, a whole different thing. And I'm wondering, well, why didn't the police ask for the description? Why was just the fact that it was a black person and man, and I was over there, and so he automatically assumed it was me and called for backup. and everything else. That's the kind of thing that is really annoying. And frankly, not just annoying, but I was scared for my life. You know, I thought, you know what, if I get belligerent and start cussing this policeman out, or I start, you know, acting unruly in some sort of way, then that is all the ammunition that he needs to shoot me dead, right? So it could be that my wife ends up coming to the emergency room or something, you know, to see if I'm going to make it. Or it could be that she comes down to the morgue to identify my body if I don't act right at that time. And so my mind, act right, yeah. Oh yeah. When I was young, my parents told me, you know, you have interactions with the police. It's yes, sir, no, sir. You know, what can I do? What, you know, and you do everything that you're told, and you don't move quickly, you don't act surly, you don't talk back, all of those things, because it could be your life.
Whoa, okay, so.
I got a million of them, Beth, I got a million of them.
I believe that you do.
And other people have worse stories than me.
I know. We have just 2 minutes left, shockingly.
Okay.
And so I want to close with two pieces here that I think are really important for our viewers. One is that from your perspective, as one particular black person out of all the zillions of black people there are, when you tell me a story like that, what kind of reaction do you want from me? I mean, or what kind of reaction would be terrible for me? And you've got like 30 seconds to say.
Okay. Well, if you didn't believe me, or you thought I was full of it, or because you hadn't had that experience, you know, you discounted mine, that would be the worst thing.
Okay.
But if you actually cared, and you hope to maybe learn and increase your awareness, I think that would be wonderful.
Okay, all right, good. So that's very simple. That's easy enough to do, to just say, wow, that happened. That must be really stressful. And there we are. It's not a big challenge. Okay, so in our last minute, what I'd love for you to do is tell us how people can get the information about the race talks and the Resolutions Northwest places that you facilitate conversations at, because I have so much enjoyed talking with you. I want to have you back at some point, and I think that there's a lot to learn and a lot of ways for us to connect.
Absolutely. So Race Talks, you can find Race Talks information at racetalkspdx.com, right? Also, Race Talks happen the second Tuesday evening of every month at the McMenamins Kennedy School. And it starts at 7, but you usually need to get there by 6:30 because they often fill up.
Fill up, okay,
yes.
Cool.
And Resolutions Northwest is a local community dispute resolution center in Portland on Broadway. And if you just look them up, resolutionsnorthwest.org, I think it is, resolutionsnorthwest.org, they have information on training, and programs that have to do with, you know, racial equity and social justice and everything in between. And it's a wonderful organization that I've been a part of for some time now as a volunteer, and they do great work. And they walk their talk, unlike some organizations that just talk a good game.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anthony.
You're very welcome.
Fascinating conversation. We'll have to do more of these. And for now, I'd like to thank you all for hanging in with us this evening, and please stick around for more TV Toastmasters. Thank you. This is Beth Genly.
What do you learn in Toastmasters? Not just how to deliver a great speech, not just how to be more confident when you do that. You learn the art, the craft of speech writing. People get paid a lot of dollars to write speeches for famous people. You can be one of those, or you can just write speeches for yourself. But you learn not only to deliver those speeches in Toastmasters, to craft a well-written speech. What you write and what you say are sometimes different because the written word and the spoken word come across differently. So in Toastmasters, you learn how to craft a speech with a strong opening to catch that audience, a good body to deliver your message, and a closing to wrap it all together. You learn how to write that speech, deliver that speech, improve that speech with greater confidence. That is part of the package you get in Toastmasters.